We're more connected digitally now than we've ever been, but there's this quiet loneliness that's everywhere. It's a modern paradox. The ancient Stoics had an answer for that. They didn't see solitude as a problem. They saw it as a practice, something to master. Seneca wrote in one of his letters, "You have to retreat into yourself." As often as possible, this video is about that retreat. We'll look at the Stoic distinction between loneliness and solitude. We'll explore some timeless principles for transforming your alone time, and we'll go through actionable insights to cultivate a deep contentment, an unshakable one. This isn't just philosophy. It's practical wisdom for building a richer inner life. So what's the one mental shift, the one that turns isolation into opportunity? From a Stoic perspective, are two different things. They come from different places. Loneliness is that feeling inside, a sense of something missing. Solitude is just the outside fact of being alone. The Stoics talked about this gap, this space between something that happens and how we respond. In that space is our judgment, our choice to agree with a first impression or not. So when you feel lonely, that's not the aloneness talking. It's you agreeing with the idea that being alone is bad, that it's a problem to fix. You've taken the neutral fact of solitude and you've put a story on it, a story about absence. That's the distinction, the circumstance, the being alone, that's not fully under your control. But your judgment about it, the story you tell, that is yours. Epictetus had this split. We control our opinions, our impulses. We don't control our body, our property, our reputation. Being alone is in that second group. You can't always control if you're physically by yourself, but you have complete control over what you decide it means. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this inner space. He said the soul takes on the color of its thoughts. You could be in a crowded place and feel completely isolated. Or you could be in a simple room alone and feel a deep peace, a sense of company in your own mind. The environment is just the setting. The quality of the experience comes from your judgments. Imagine two people in the same quiet room. One person hears the silence and calls it emptiness. Their mind goes to what they're missing, who isn't there, the connections they don't have. They've agreed that this aloneness is a problem. They feel anxious, restless, lonely. The other person hears the same silence and sees it as space, space to breathe, to think, to just be. They've chosen to see the solitude not as a loss but as a chance. They feel calm, reflective, present. The outside circumstance is exactly the same, the inner world, and so the whole experience is completely different. So here's a simple thing. Think of a time recently when you were by yourself, a quiet evening maybe, or a commute alone. What was the first thought that came? Did a story of lack come in? Or did you get a sense, even for a second, of the potential in that open space? That first judgment is where the path splits. One way goes to loneliness, the other goes to a solitude you can learn to value. That calm you felt, that sense of space, that's the first thing the Stoics were after. Marcus Aurelius had a name for it. He called it the Inner Citadel. It's a fortress inside you. Nothing outside can ever storm it. It's like the deepest room in your own mind. A room that isn't run by chaos or by whatever you're feeling in the moment. It's run by your reason, by the virtues you choose. So when everything outside gets loud or confusing or just goes quiet, you can go there. That's your real source of strength. And the thing is, when that inner place is strong, when it's well fortified, you stop needing other people so much. You don't need their company or their validation or their entertainment for your peace. It just fades, because depending on others for your worth, that's like building your house on sand. It seems stable until the tide of opinion changes, or until someone just walks away. That dependency, it weakens the walls of your citadel. It hands the keys to your contentment to things you can't control. Marcus wrote about this. He told himself to go within. He said, "Nowhere can a person find a more peaceful retreat than in his own soul, especially if he has thoughts inside him that let him touch a kind of calm. A still ocean, and that's the practice. In solitude, you're not just killing time. You're not waiting for the noise to come back. You're actively retreating to that fortress. You're walking the walls, you're checking the foundations, you're strengthening it. So what does that look like practically? It's not about some elaborate meditation. It can be, but it's simpler. It's using a quiet moment, maybe 5 minutes with your coffee in the morning, or a break in your day, to consciously check in with your own principles. To ask yourself silently, what matters to me right now? Is it patience? Is it the courage to face a difficult task? Is it the wisdom to see this situation clearly, without getting caught in other people's drama? That act of turning inward, of consulting your own virtue, that's the exercise. That repetition builds the muscle of self-reliance. So here's a question. What are the foundational virtues, the ones that form the walls of your own inner citadel? Is it courage, the kind that lets you face silence without fear? Is it wisdom, to see solitude as fertile ground, not as emptiness? Is it self-discipline, to choose reflection over distraction? Your walls are built from what you value most. And every moment you spend alone consciously is another stone laid in place. Friedrich Nietzsche had this idea, Amor Fati, love of your fate, and it fits with the Stoics who saw the universe as having a rational order. Providence, they called it, the logos. Everything that happens is part of that weave. It's not random, it's not against you, it just is what is, and our job is to line up our will with that. To accept it, not with resistance but with cooperation. Epictetus said it, don't seek events to go as you wish for events to go as they do, then your life goes well. That's the shift from resisting what is to welcoming it. Solitude stops being a disruption. It becomes the material of your life right now. That's where loneliness dissolves. You're not fighting a circumstance you can't control. You're embracing it as if you'd chosen it, and in a way, you are choosing it by the meaning you give it. So take a quiet room on a Tuesday night. The reframe is simple. That evening isn't empty time to fill. It's a gift of time delivered by the flow of life. It's the universe giving you space. The practice is to treat it that way. Create a small ritual, brew a cup of tea, sit with a book you've meant to read. Not to pass time, but to savor the act of learning, or open a journal. Write not just what happened, but what you observed in yourself, your reactions. Your quiet thoughts. It could be 30 minutes on a neglected skill, not for some grand future, but for the simple joy of engaging your mind. You're not killing time. You're loving the fate of this hour. You're saying, this is my life right here, and I will meet it with my full attention. The evening transforms from a sentence of loneliness into a chosen practice of cultivation. So here's a question. This week, find one aspect of your solitude to practice loving, the quiet of a morning commute, the hour after everyone's gone to bed. Choose one thing, and for that period, decide to see it not as lack, but as provision, as the raw material given to you to shape. That's how you build a friendship with your own company. Let's step back far outside the walls of this room and look at this moment of solitude from a much larger view. The Stoics had a tool for that. They called it the view from above. It's a mental exercise, an act of imagination that shrinks your personal worries down to their actual size. When loneliness feels like a heavy blanket, this practice lifts it off. It shows you the vast tapestry you're part of. Marcus Aurelius used it all the time. He would remind himself to think of the whole, the city of the world. He'd think about the stars, the endless cycles of nature, the countless lives being lived all at once. In his writing, he tells himself to see the court, the sea, the ceremonies of birth, and the rituals of farewell happening everywhere simultaneously. From that vantage point, your feeling of isolation becomes a single thread in an immense weaving. You're not a solitary dot, You're a conscious point in a living, breathing cosmos. The practice works because it directly challenges the story loneliness tells you. That story says you're separate, cut off, missing out. The view from above shows you connection on a scale so grand it's almost impossible to feel small inside it. Here's how you can try it. The next time the quiet feels like too much, close your eyes if you can. Start by picturing the room you're in. See its walls, the familiar objects. Now, in your mind, pull the camera back. See your building or your home from the outside. Pull back further. See your street, your neighborhood, as if from a high hill. Now see your entire city or town, a pattern of lights and roads. Keep going. See the outline of your country, then the curve of the planet itself, a blue and white marble hanging in the black. Finally, see that planet as a speck orbiting a star, which is one of billions in a galaxy, which is one of countless galaxies in an expanding universe. Now pause in that vast, silent expanse. Locate your moment, your quiet evening, your feeling. Place it within that infinite scale. Does the feeling shrink? Does it change? What often happens is a profound sense of peace. The pressure of your personal narrative lessens. You're not alone in a room. You're a living being on a planet, experiencing a fleeting human emotion, part of a story billions of years old. That shift is the antidote. It doesn't erase the feeling, but it puts it in a container so large the feeling can't overflow. It has space to just be without defining you. So tonight, or the next time the quiet feels heavy, take 3 minutes for this flight. Don't just think it, see it, feel the expansion in your mind. Then come back to your room, your chair, your breath. Notice if the silence now feels less like emptiness and more like a part of something immense. That spaciousness you sense, that's the foundation of a deeper contentment. The Stoics practiced hardship. They trained themselves to face it. They called this askesis. It's voluntary discomfort, not about seeking pain, not punishment. It's a controlled exposure, like a vaccine. You take a small dose of a challenge to build resilience against the full force of it. The goal is to prove something to yourself. That you can be okay with less, that you're more capable than your fears say. Seneca was a master of this. He was one of the richest men in Rome, yet he would set aside days to live simply. Wear rough clothes, sleep on a hard bed, eat plain food. He wrote that he did this so he would never fear losing his wealth. He wanted to know in his bones that his happiness wasn't tied to comfort. We can apply that same logic to our social wealth, to our need for constant company, for noise, for validation. The practice is to step into quiet solitude. To prove you can not only survive it, but find a kind of richness within it. You're strengthening a muscle, the muscle of self-contentment, every time you choose to be alone with your thoughts. Without rushing to fill the silence, you make a deposit in your inner citadel. You build evidence against the story that says you need external stimulation to be okay. So what does a modern version look like? It doesn't have to be dramatic. Start with a digital Sabbath. One evening, silence your phone, shut down the screens. Exist in the quiet of your own space or a silent walk. No podcast, no music, just the rhythm of your steps and the world, or a meal alone, at home or in a cafe. Without a book or a device, just you and the experience of eating, of observing, of being present. The point isn't to endure boredom. The point is to observe what arises when distractions fall away. Do you feel restless, anxious, a pull to check something? That's the discomfort. That's the muscle being worked. And by sitting with it, not fighting it, you learn a lesson. You learn the feeling passes, that you are still there, whole and capable on the other side. So here's a challenge. What small, voluntary act of solitude can you do this week? To prove your independence to yourself, it doesn't need to be an hour. Start with 10 minutes. 10 minutes of doing nothing but sitting, listening to your own breath. In that space, you're not waiting for life to resume. You're practicing the art of being your own sufficient company. And with each practice, the fear of being alone loses a little more of its power. Seneca started a letter with a direct instruction: talk to yourself all the time. That's the central skill. Solitude becomes useful ground when you can have a discussion inside it. Not a messy stream of anxiety, but a deliberate talk steered by your own logic. The Stoics didn't just tolerate quiet, they applied it. They made the silence into a school where they were the pupil and the instructor. Marcus Aurelius is the clearest evidence of this. His personal notes, what we call the meditations, were never for an audience. They were his private discussion. A set of reminders to himself, often written late at night or in the calm of a military tent. There, he challenges his own opinions, repeats his core beliefs, and trains his own character. That journal was his echo chamber. It changed the weight of ruling an empire into a dialogue he could handle, piece by reason piece. That's the mechanism. When you sense that pang of loneliness, it's usually just an alert that your internal talk has stopped or turned against you. Keeping a journal the Stoic way is how you take back that discussion. It gives a shape to the quiet. It makes vacant time into active thought. You're not just enduring a mood, you're confronting it. You're taking it apart with logic. So what does that discussion actually look like? It isn't dumping every raw feeling onto the page. It's inspecting those feelings with a steady, inquisitive eye. The Stoics had a method for this, usually at day's end, called a review. You can use a simple framework. Ask yourself 3 things. What form of loneliness did I meet today? Was the heart of that feeling under my control? And what did I decide to do about it? The first question labels the event. You pinpoint the narrative you believed. Maybe it was the idea, I'm not needed by anyone, or this stillness is too much. The second question uses the Stoic split. You divide the outside fact, the physical solitude, from your internal verdict about it. The fact wasn't yours to control, but your verdict, your acceptance of the story of absence that belonged to you. The third question focuses on your agency. How did you use your choice? Did you strengthen the story with more bleak thoughts? Or did you, even briefly, attempt to view the space as a chance? This 3-part conversation does something deep. It takes a broad, heavy sense of separation and splits it into parts you can actually address. It shifts you from being overrun by a sensation to watching your own thinking. The silence isn't hollow anymore. It's occupied with the intentional task of knowing yourself. So tonight, before you finish, take 5 minutes, find a still spot. Open a notebook or a blank screen. Write a short exchange with yourself about your day, but write it from the stance of a Stoic witness. Let one voice describe the emotion. Let the more reasoned voice answer with questions and calm direction. You're not solving everything in one entry. You're just rehearsing the most critical discussion you'll ever hold. The one that shows you how to be your own most understanding and clear-eyed friend. Loneliness hurts. It's because we've outsourced our sense of worth. We've given it over to other people's attention. We've handed the scorecard of our value to a world that's fickle, that's distracted, that craving for a like, for a comment, for a sign we matter to someone. That's the engine of so much modern isolation. The Stoics had a radical answer. They called it apatheia. It's often misunderstood. It's not about becoming cold. It's not about being unfeeling. It's about achieving a state of freedom. Freedom from being jerked around by the opinions of others, by their reactions. It's placing your sense of worth on a foundation you actually own, your own character. Your own actions, your virtue. Epictetus put it plainly. He said, if anyone tells you that a certain person speaks ill of you, don't make excuses about what is said. Instead, answer, he was ignorant of my other faults, else he would not have mentioned these alone. That's the core of the detachment. His opinion of you is in his control. It's in his mind. It is an external. Your character, your effort to live with integrity, that is yours. To tie your happiness to his opinion is to chain your peace to a moving target. So think about the last time you felt a pang of loneliness. Was it truly about being physically alone, or was it the quiet echo of a need unmet, the need to be seen? To be acknowledged, to be validated as interesting or important by someone else. That need, when it goes unanswered, creates the hollow feeling. The practice of Stoic detachment is to answer that need yourself from within. It's to become the source of your own validation. This turns the dynamic completely. You are no longer a passive recipient hoping for attention. You become the active judge of your own efforts. Let's make this practical. Contrast 2 evenings. In the first, you spend an hour scrolling. Each refresh is a tiny hope for a notification, a sign that you're connected, that you're relevant. When the likes are few, a subtle emptiness creeps in. Your worth in that moment felt tied to a digital tally. Now, the second evening, you spend that same hour working on something that matters only to you, learning a few chords on a guitar, writing a page of a story no one may ever read, organizing a closet not for show but for the simple order of it. You finish, and there is no applause, no notification, but there is a quiet, solid satisfaction. The kind that comes from having used your time and your mind according to your own values. That satisfaction is internal validation. It's the currency of your inner citadel. It doesn't rely on an audience, so here is a question for you to sit with. Identify one small area in your life where you consistently seek a thumbs up from the outside world. Is it in your work, waiting for a manager's praise to feel your day was successful? Is it in a hobby where you hesitate to share something unless you're sure it will be impressive? Just pick one. Now for 1 week, experiment. When you complete that task or engage in that activity, make a conscious effort to perform your own review first. Ask yourself, did I do this with diligence, with honesty, with the best of my current ability? Your own yes is the only validation you need to file away. This is how you reclaim your worth. You bring it back from the marketplace of opinion. You bring it back home to where it was always safest. Loneliness almost never comes from this moment. It's a story that gets built across time. It reaches back into a past you wish had gone another way, or it projects forward into a future you imagine as empty. The story says, I was alone before, I'm alone now, I'll be alone later. That narrative pulls you across hours and days that aren't actually here. The Stoic move is a sharp cut through that story. It anchors you in the only place you can ever actually be, the present, this breath, this sensation, this point where life is happening. Marcus Aurelius wrote about this to himself over and over. He said, remember, the present moment is all you ever have. The past is gone. The future isn't here yet. We each live only in the present, this brief instant. Everything else is memory or anticipation. To waste this instant by being lost in regret or fear is to miss your only real contact with life. When you're fully in the present, loneliness can't take root. Its power comes from the ghosts of yesterday and the shadows of tomorrow. In the clear space of the now, there's just experience, the weight of a book in your hands, the taste of the air, the way light falls on the wall. There's no story of lack here, only the direct data from your senses. So how do you do this when the mind wants to wander into that sad story? You use a simple anchor, something sensory. Find yourself in a quiet room feeling that familiar pull. Instead of following the thought, guide your awareness to the physical world. Look around and name 5 things you can see. The grain of the wood on the table, the slow movement of a clock's hand, the color of the light through the window. Then name 4 things you can feel: the texture of your shirt against your skin, the solid support of the chair beneath you, the coolness of the air on your face. Name 3 things you can hear: the hum of the refrigerator, a distant car, the rhythm of your own breathing. This isn't a distraction, it's a homecoming. Each observation is a gentle tug on the leash of your attention, pulling it back from the imagined territories of past and future and planting it in the ground of the present. In that grounded state, solitude changes. It's no longer an absence of people. It becomes a rich presence of the world. You're not missing out on life. You're immersed in it with a sharpness that constant company often drowns out. So here's a question. Next time you feel that hollow sense, pause and ask, where is my mind right now? Is it replaying an old conversation, wishing for a different outcome? Is it projecting forward, picturing an empty weekend or a silent holiday? Can you see that those are just thoughts, not reality? And then can you gently, without judgment, guide it back to the feeling of your feet on the floor, back to the sound in the room, back to this breath and the next one? That's the Stoic now. It's your most reliable sanctuary, and it's always available, waiting for you to step inside. Happiness starts with wanting what you already have. Wanting your own company, that's the Stoic discipline of desire. It's a total shift in your aim. So much of the suffering in being alone is just this quiet, constant wanting. Wanting a different situation, a busy social life, a partner, some notification to break the silence. That wanting creates a friction between the life you have and the one you imagine. The discipline of desire is sanding that down until it's gone. It's learning to want the exact circumstance you're in. Epictetus had a startling way of putting it. He said happiness is the fulfillment of our desires, but then he added the twist. It's on us to desire only what's in our power. If you desire constant company, that's outside your control. You're setting yourself up for frustration. But if you desire to make good use of your solitude, to find peace in your own mind, that's entirely within your command. Your happiness becomes achievable right now because its condition is already met. You are already alone. The only thing missing is your desire to see the value in it. This isn't pretending loneliness feels good. It's more honest, more rigorous. It's the work of looking directly at your solitary state and asking what good is here. Waiting to be recognized. When you stop fighting the reality, you start to see its provisions. The quiet isn't emptiness, it's space for thought. The open schedule isn't a void. It's freedom. The lack of social obligation isn't neglect. It's an opportunity for deep rest. The pace is entirely your own, allowing for a self-directed growth that gets crowded out by the noise of others. Think of it like this. You're holding a plain cup of water, but you're yearning for sparkling juice. The yearning makes the water taste bland, even bitter. The discipline asks you to set down the fantasy of the juice and truly taste the water, to notice its clarity, its coolness, how it quenches a thirst. You may still prefer juice, but you stop suffering from the lack of it. You find a genuine appreciation for what's already in your hand. So let's make it practical. Take a moment right where you are, grab a piece of paper or open a note, write down 3 things, not grand statements. Simple, concrete goods you can genuinely appreciate about this solitude. Maybe it's listening to your own thoughts without interruption, the freedom to eat what you want when you want, the quiet that lets you hear the rain against the window. A sound often missed. Write down 3. This act is the beginning of curating your desire. It's you consciously shifting focus from what's absent to what's abundantly, quietly present. This list is your evidence that your own company isn't a sentence, it's an offering. When human company isn't there, you're still not alone. You're in the presence of the whole natural world. That was a basic truth for the Stoics. They saw the cosmos as a living, breathing organism, a single, interconnected whole. They called that sympatheia. Everything is woven together. A pull on one thread is felt across the whole fabric. Feeling separate means you've forgotten your place in that weave. You've mistaken a quiet moment for a permanent exile from connection, but the connection is all around you. It's the air, the ground, the light in the room. Marcus Aurelius went back to this for his own solace. He'd write to himself, look at the stars as if you were running right beside them. Think about the elements changing into one another. Thoughts like that wash away the dust of earthly life. He wasn't just being poetic, he was doing a mental exercise, reminding himself that his own small life, with all its worries and isolation, was still a part of a vast, ordered system. That system, nature with a capital N, was his companion, evidence of a shared reason, a logos in everything from a galaxy to a leaf. To observe it was to commune with that intelligence. So moving from the idea to a felt experience, especially inside four walls, the practice is simple, shifting your attention from the internal story of lack to the external reality of presence. It starts with noticing. You could call it a stoic walk, but it can happen anywhere. If you have a window, look out. Don't just see a tree, see its architecture. How its branches hold the sky, the resilience in its trunk standing through storms. See the cloud moving, a tiny piece of a global water cycle that's been turning for billions of years. If you have a houseplant, really look. See the new leaf unfurling, a silent act of growth and persistence right beside you, asking for just light and water. In that act of observation, something shifts. You're no longer a solitary mind in a room. You're a conscious participant in a silent conversation, witnessing the expression of the same natural laws that formed your bones and breath. That's the companionship of nature. It doesn't talk back in words. It speaks in patterns, in cycles, in quiet endurance. It models a kind of peace. The tree isn't anxious about being a tree. The cloud isn't lonely drifting. They simply are, fulfilling their nature. And in their presence, you're reminded to simply be, fulfilling yours. So a small task to make this tangible. Sometime in the next day, give 10 minutes of your solitude to one natural element, that houseplant on your shelf, a view of sky from your window, if you can, a tree in a park. Go and be with it, not with your phone, not with a plan. Just observe, notice the details, the texture, the color, how it exists in space, and as you do, contemplate that silent, enduring existence. This other life that shares your world, your air, your moment in time. In that shared space, ask yourself, does the quiet still feel like emptiness, or does it start to feel like a different kind of fullness? A companionship with the world itself. Solitude gives you this one privilege. You get an audience with the greatest minds in history, anytime you want. You just open their books, they're waiting for you. For a Stoic, this isn't just reading, it's a dialogue, a conversation across centuries. It's the deepest kind of intellectual companionship. Seneca wrote about this. He saw his library not as a collection of objects, but as a gathering of friends. In his letters, he tells Lucilius we can live with the finest people of every age. How, by reading their works, he said the thoughts of great minds are preserved for us, to be our guides and our comfort. This practice changes a quiet room. It turns it from a place of potential loneliness into a kind of vibrant symposium. You're not just consuming information, you're engaging with a teacher. You're asking questions of the text, listening for its reply, and shaping your own understanding in that process. Marcus Aurelius had his own mentors on the page. He quoted philosophers like Epictetus and Heraclitus as if they were standing beside him, offering counsel for ruling an empire. His private journal is filled with that absorbed wisdom. It shows how he used reading to fortify his inner citadel against the chaos of the world. That's the key distinction. Reading for a Stoic isn't escapism. It's not about leaving your reality. It's about entering a disciplined engagement, one that directly strengthens your reality. You're inviting these timeless voices to help you examine your life, to challenge your judgments, to model a way of thinking that leads to tranquility. So how do you move from passive reading to this active dialogue? One method is a structured Stoic reading hour. Choose a specific text, a letter from Seneca, a passage from the Meditations, a discourse from Epictetus. Set a timer, not to rush but to dedicate the space. As you read, keep a notebook beside you. This is crucial. Don't just highlight lines, write down the sentence that strikes you, and then beneath it write your response. What question does it raise for your life right now? How does it challenge a current worry or a story you've been telling yourself? if the text says you have power over your mind, not outside events, write back. What event am I letting control my peace today that turns the page into a conversation partner? You're not a spectator. You're a participant in an age-old discussion about how to live. So here's a challenge for your next moment of solitude. If you could ask Seneca one question about being content alone, what would it be? Would you ask how to handle the quiet hours when your mind races? Or how to stop comparing your solitary life to the seemingly full lives of others? Formulate that question clearly in your mind. Now, seek the answer in his writings. Open his letters, maybe start with the one where he discusses retreating into oneself. Read with that specific question as your guide. You may not find a direct quote that answers it perfectly, but you will engage in the search, and in that search you'll find something far more valuable than a simple answer. You'll find the companionship of a mind. A mind that has pondered these human struggles for 2,000 years. It reminds you, you are never truly alone in your questioning. The Romans had this word, Otium. It means noble leisure. It's the opposite of loneliness. It's solitude, but solitude put to work for the soul. That's a critical distinction. Loneliness, it often grows in empty time. Those stretches with no agenda where boredom sets in. Otium is the answer to that, the deliberate answer. It's not just entertainment. Entertainment just passes the time. And it's not sloth. Sloth drains you. Otium is leisure with a purpose. It's for activities that build you up from the inside. The Stoics saw it as fertile ground. The ground where philosophy grows, where you cultivate your character. Seneca wrote an entire essay on the shortness of life. He attacked the frantic busyness, the negotium that people use to avoid themselves. He said the busiest people are often the most impoverished in spirit. They give all their time to others, to chores, to shallow pursuits, and have nothing left for the most important work, the work on themselves. He praised the wise person who guards their leisure jealously, not as idleness but as space for reflection, for study, for the art of living. So think about your own week. How much of your free time is negotium? Busyness for its own sake, scrolling to fill a void, and how much is true otium, time that leaves you more substantial, more at peace than when you began. The transformation is a choice, a conscious one. It's taking a potentially lonely afternoon and giving it a shape, a gentle, purposeful shape. It could be spending an hour learning a philosophical concept. Not just reading about it, wrestling with it, writing down how it applies to a current challenge. It could be writing a thoughtful letter to a friend. In the spirit of Seneca's letters, sharing an insight, not just gossip. It could be practicing a craft, woodworking, sketching, gardening with full mindfulness. Where the goal isn't a perfect product, it's the quality of attention, the attention you bring to each movement. In that focused engagement, something shifts. You're no longer killing time, waiting for connection. You're in a deep dialogue with the task, and through it with your own capacities. The hour becomes rich, full, nourishing. The empty feeling, it simply has no room to enter. So here's a question. How can you convert 1 hour this week, 1 hour of what feels like empty time, into otium? What single activity will you choose, a soul-nourishing one? It doesn't need to be grand, it only needs to be intentional, an act where you are fully present, and where you are the primary beneficiary of your own attention. That pang when you see people together. The Stoics would say it's a mistake about where happiness is, a judgment error. You see a photo of friends laughing, a story about a party you didn't get invited to, and your mind builds a story. It says the good life is happening over there and I'm here missing it. That feeling, that fear of missing out, rests on one idea, that a life well lived is found in those gatherings outside of you. Stoicism corrects that. It says the good life is an internal project. It's living with wisdom and character, and you can do that anywhere, in a crowd or alone in your kitchen. The place doesn't matter. Epictetus was firm on this. He taught that happiness depends on our choices, our judgments, how we use what we see. It doesn't depend on being included. He said, if you think what is free by nature is your own, you'll be untroubled. But if you think what belongs to another is your own, you'll be disturbed. That party, that invitation, that social circle, those belong to another. They're externals. Your choice to find contentment in your own principles, in your own company, that's what's free by nature. That's yours. So FOMO is the disturbance that comes when you claim an external as necessary for your peace. Picture the frantic energy of trying to be everywhere socially. Constantly checking feeds, saying yes to events out of obligation. That subtle anxiety humming on a quiet night. That life is chasing phantoms. You're chasing a reflection of a good life in the approval of others. It's exhausting because the target is always moving outside your control. Then picture the steady satisfaction of a life lived intentionally, even quietly. The person who, on a Friday night, chooses to work on something meaningful, or read, or just reflect, not because they have to, but because they've judged this time as good. Their sense of worth isn't flickering with each notification. It's anchored in their own actions. They aren't missing out on life. They're inhabiting it on their own terms. The quiet isn't a void to fear. It's the canvas for their character. So next time that fear strikes, when you see evidence of a world having fun without you, pause. Ask yourself, is the good I think I'm missing within my control, or is it an external I'm overvaluing? Am I confusing a social event with the good life itself? The event is neutral. It's your judgment that gives it power to diminish your moment. Question that judgment, and you reclaim your peace. You realize you aren't missing the party. You're choosing a different expression of a life lived well. The Stoic sage aims for autarkeia. It's a kind of contentment, unshakable, that doesn't need anything from outside. That's the goal, the final expression of inner strength. But it's not about becoming a hermit, rejecting all human warmth. It's about cultivating a source of serenity inside you. Something so robust, so reliable, that other people become a welcome addition, a pleasant bonus, but never a requirement for your peace. In that state, solitude isn't a threat. It's the test, the training ground for your self-sufficiency. That's where you prove it to yourself that your well-being is generated internally, moment by moment. By your own choices, your own judgments. Ancient sources describe this. Diogenes Laertius, in his accounts, wrote that the end goal is to live in agreement with nature. For a rational being, that means living virtuously, and a key fruit of that life is this independence. The sage is self-sufficient because all the goods they need for happiness flow from their own character. They are free because their happiness isn't chained to anything they could lose. That's the pinnacle. Your joy isn't out there, in other people's hands, in social plans, in the volatile world of events. It's here, in the citadel you've been building all along. So what does practicing this look like on an ordinary Tuesday? It shows up in small, daily decisions. It's the conscious choice to spend a quiet evening reflecting. Even when there's an invitation to a loud event you feel no pull toward, you're not choosing isolation out of fear. You're choosing the deliberate use of your time to strengthen your inner resources. You're saying, my peace doesn't depend on being seen at that party. It depends on my connection to my own thoughts, or it's the decision to enjoy a meal alone, savoring the food and your own observations without the crutch of a phone. You're practicing the art of being sufficient company for yourself. Each of those choices is a rep, a small weight lifted in the gym of your mind, strengthening the muscle of autarkeia. This brings a question, a personal audit. On a scale of 1 to 10, how dependent is your peace on the presence or the approval of others? Be honest. If your mood swings based on who texts you back, if a weekend with no plans fills you with dread, your number might be lower. That's not a judgment, it's a starting point. Now imagine the other end. What would a 10 look like? What would complete self-sufficiency feel like in your daily life? Maybe it's that deep, calm center that remains undisturbed. Whether you're in a crowd or in silence, it's the ability to derive genuine joy from your own pursuits, your own growth, your own quiet moments, knowing that nothing essential is missing. That vision of a 10 is your compass. It points the way from needing the world to fill you up to becoming a source that is itself full. Gratitude for solitude. It's a stoic practice, really direct. You take the thing that feels like a burden and look for the gifts hidden inside it. Gratitude isn't just a feeling. It's a tool for attention. It forces your focus away from what you think is missing and onto what's actually there, what's present. When you're lonely, your mind is listing absences. A gratitude list is the antidote. It lists provisions. It changes your basic judgment of the quiet. From this is empty to this is full of something I missed. Marcus Aurelius started his days like this. He'd write down things he was grateful for, from his family's character to the simple fact he existed. He was training his perception to start from abundance, not from lack. We can use that same lens on our aloneness. The goal isn't to pretend solitude is easy. It's to find the real, concrete benefits it gives you right now, benefits a crowded life usually hides. So get a notebook or open a note on your phone, call it Solitude's Gifts, then use a simple template. Complete this sentence 3 times with specifics from your life. I am grateful for this quiet because it allows me to, for instance, your list might be, I am grateful for this quiet because it allows me to hear my own thoughts clearly without the static of other opinions. I am grateful for this quiet because it allows me the rest I need to recover from a hard week. I am grateful for this quiet because it allows me to get deep into a book, following an idea at my own pace. The power is in the specifics, not I am grateful for peace, but I am grateful for the peace to notice how the afternoon light moves across this room. This practice does something. It turns solitude from a passive state you endure into an active condition you use. You use it for your own growth, for restoration. You're not a victim of circumstance anymore. You're a beneficiary. Tonight, before you end your day, make your own solitude gratitude list. Don't aim for grand statements. Focus on what's unique to your life right now. What does this particular season of quiet make possible for you? What can it do that a season of constant company could not? When you list those answers, you're not just changing your mind about one evening. You're building a new relationship with your own company, one grateful entry at a time. The time you have is finite. That's something the Stoics thought about. They had a meditation, Memento Mori, remember you must die. It's not meant to scare you. It's meant to focus you, to cut through putting things off, to remind you this hour, this quiet evening isn't practice. It's the real thing. When you see your alone time that way, it changes. An open block on your calendar stops being empty space. It becomes your most valuable currency. Time to cultivate your own soul. Seneca wrote about this, his essay on the shortness of life. He says we aren't given a short life, we make it short. We don't lack time, we waste it. We act like mortals in what we fear and like immortals in what we desire. We postpone what matters, we assume endless tomorrows. And we fill our days with busyness, trivial things. He called it the preoccupations of the preoccupied. We do it to avoid one thing, being alone with the reality of our limited existence. That's the real loss, to have the gift of solitude, uninterrupted time, and to waste it on distraction, scrolling through other people's lives, numbing entertainment. Or just ruminating in loneliness. That's treating a finite resource as if it were infinite. The Memento Mori meditation creates a gentle urgency. It asks, if this were one of your last 100 quiet evenings, would you spend it this way? The answer usually points you toward substance. Take 2 identical hours. In the first, you forget Memento Mori. The evening feels long, maybe dull. You turn on a streaming service. Scroll through menus for 20 minutes, half watch a show, check your phone, the hour passes. You don't feel rested or enriched, just slightly more vacant. In the second hour, the reminder is there. You know this time is a non-renewable fragment of your life. How will you use it? You might work on a legacy project. Writing a letter to a future family member, organizing photos with captions, building something with your hands that will outlast you. You might use it to learn. Truly learn a concept that intrigues you, taking notes, wrestling with the ideas, or you might use it for repair work, mending your relationship with yourself. Sitting in honest reflection, journaling to understand a worry, or just practicing deep, attentive rest without guilt. The same 60 minutes, but in the second, you're an active participant in your own life. Investing in your inner citadel, you aren't killing time, you're honoring it. So here's a question to carry into your next quiet moment. If you knew you had only 1 year of solitary evenings left, how would you spend them differently starting tonight? The answer isn't a frantic to-do list, it's a change in quality, a shift from passive endurance to active, meaningful engagement. It's about choosing tonight to do one thing that makes that hour count. Not for applause, but for the silent, solid satisfaction of knowing you used your limited and precious time well. Stoic solitude isn't about being antisocial. It's a strategic retreat. You step back so you can become someone who contributes more to the common good. That's a vital piece of it, the time alone. It's not about turning away from the world. It's about turning inward to gather strength, to find clarity, to build virtue, so you can turn back outward and you have more to offer. The Stoics had a word for this. Oikosis, a sense of belonging, a duty to the wider human community. They believed we are social creatures by nature. Our highest purpose is to live in harmony with others. To live for the benefit of others, but to do that well, you need resources, inner resources, a quiet mind, a resilient spirit, a character you've examined. Where do you build those? Often in the quiet workshop of solitude. Think of a well, a community well. If you keep drawing water from it, giving it to everyone, and you never take time to let it refill from the deep springs, it will run dry. Your energy is like that, your patience, your capacity for kindness, constant social engagement without periods of retreat depletes them. Loneliness is often the feeling of that well being empty. Stoic solitude is the conscious act of stepping back, to let the waters rise again, to tend to the source. So when you return to your people, to your work, to your community, you have a surplus to share. You're not giving from a place of depletion or resentment. You're giving from a place of abundance, from genuine choice. Marcus Aurelius embodied this. His private writings, the meditations, were his retreat, his time at the well. In them, he fortified his patience, his sense of justice, his endurance. He reminded himself of his duty to his fellow citizens. He wrote that what brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee. He used his solitude to align his personal struggles with his public role. That quiet reflection in his tent, that was the preparation. It allowed him to lead an empire, to judge, to serve with a measure of wisdom, instead of reacting from sheer exhaustion or from ego. So in an ordinary life, this reframes every act of self-cultivation in solitude. It becomes a social act. When you spend a quiet evening learning a new skill, you're not just passing time. You're increasing your future capacity to solve problems, to teach others, to contribute value in your workplace or your home. When you work on your patience through meditation or journaling, wrestling with your own frustrations in the quiet, you're indirectly serving every person who will interact with you tomorrow. You're building a reservoir of calm so it won't snap under pressure. When you use solitude to examine your biases and judgments, you're becoming a fairer friend, a more understanding partner, a more thoughtful citizen. You're preparing to engage in conversations with more listening and less reacting. This brings a question. How can the work I do on myself in solitude make me a better friend, family member, or citizen when I re-engage? Be specific. If you're working on managing anxiety in your quiet time, your gift to others might be a more peaceful presence in your home. If you're using solitude to study history or philosophy, your gift might be deeper conversations, more thoughtful conversations that uplift your circle. If you're simply practicing the art of being content alone, your gift will be relationships that are chosen, not clung to out of need. You enter them as a whole person, not as someone looking to be completed. That might be the greatest social contribution solitude can forge, the ability to connect from a place of genuine strength, not from hidden hunger. We fill silence with noise because we're afraid of what we might hear. The Stoics, they leaned into that silence. They saw it not as a void to avoid, but as the natural habitat for reason. The modern world is a symphony of constant input, a podcast in your ear on the commute, a screen flickering in the background at home, music to fill the empty rooms. That noise can feel like company, but it often functions as a mask, a distraction from the internal quiet where loneliness sometimes whispers its story. The Stoic move is to remove the mask, to sit in the quiet, both outside and in, and listen, not to the story, but to the space around it. That space is where your rational mind can finally get a word in. Inner chatter feels loudest in silence. The fears, the regrets, the replaying of conversations, the what-ifs about the future. In a noisy room, these thoughts get drowned out. You can mistake that relief for peace, but it's temporary. The Stoic practice involves sitting with the silence precisely to observe that chatter, to see it for what it is. A series of automatic judgments, impressions, many of them irrational. By observing them without immediately engaging, you create a gap. In that gap, you exercise your power of choice. You can choose not to agree with the thought that says this quiet is terrible. You can choose to see it as neutral or even as beneficial. That's how you find peace in the absence of sound. Not by eliminating thought, but by changing your relationship to it. Philosophical schools in the ancient world often incorporated practices of silence. It was a discipline, a way to turn down the volume of the external world to better hear the voice of one's own guiding principle, the hegemonicon. Marcus Aurelius, in the midst of his imperial duties, constantly returned to the value of quiet reflection. He wrote to himself about retreating into his own soul, that small room furnished with peace. For him, the external silence of a camp at night was not an emptiness. It was the canvas upon which he could paint his thoughts with clarity. He was using the external quiet to cultivate an internal quiet, a still point from which to view the chaos of his responsibilities. You can bring this into your life with a simple, almost radical practice, a silence minute. It's a deliberate exercise in non-engagement. Find a chair. Set a timer for just 60 seconds. Sit in complete quiet. No music, no phone, no background hum from an appliance if you can help it. Close your eyes. Your task is not to empty your mind. That's nearly impossible. Your task is to observe the thoughts that arise, as if they were clouds passing across a vast, silent sky. A thought comes, I should be doing something. You note it. A cloud, a feeling arises. This is uncomfortable. You note it. Another cloud. You do not follow the thought down its path. You do not argue with the feeling. You simply acknowledge its presence and return your attention to the silence that holds it. This is practicing detachment from the mental noise of loneliness. With each repetition, you strengthen the muscle of the observer, the part of you that is not the chatter, but the aware space in which the chatter happens. So here is a challenge, not for 1 minute, but for 5. Sometime before this day ends, find 5 minutes. Sit in total silence. Notice the initial discomfort, the itch to reach for a device, the impulse to label the time as wasted. Note it all and stay. See if, after the initial restlessness, there is a subtle shift, a settling. the noise of lack might soften, and in its place, a simple, unadorned calm might begin to appear. That calm is not an absence, it is the presence of your own capacity for peace, waiting patiently beneath the layers of habit and fear. It is the stoic comfort with quiet, rediscovered in the space between your own thoughts. Nothing lasts, not even this feeling, and for the Stoics that was a comfort. No state lasts forever, not loneliness, not solitude. They didn't just accept that. They found peace in it. They saw the universe as a river, constant change. Everything arises, exists, and then passes back into the whole. To cling to a good moment or to fight a bad one is to fight reality itself. And that fight, that's where extra suffering comes from. Your solitude right now, whether it feels heavy or light, it's temporary. It's not your identity. It's a chapter, and seeing that can take the desperation out of loneliness. The anxiety that says this will last forever. It loses its power when you see it as a season. Marcus Aurelius kept coming back to this. He wrote that time is a river, a violent current. A thing is brought to sight, and then it's swept away and another takes its place. And that too will be swept away. He said the things of the body are a river, things of the soul a dream, a vapor. Life is a warfare, a pilgrim's sojourn. Fame after life is just forgetfulness. That wasn't bleak to him, it was freeing. Everything you experience, your status, your health, your mood, it's all in motion. It will all be buried in time. So why put your whole sense of self into a temporary arrangement? Why let a passing feeling of isolation define your worth or your capacity for joy? This perspective shrinks the problem. It doesn't dismiss the feeling, it puts it on a timeline. It gives it an end, even if you can't see it yet. You can apply this in two ways. First, to a long stretch of solitude. Maybe you've moved, or a relationship ended, or this life stage just has more time alone. It can feel permanent. The Stoic view asks you to see it as a chapter. What's the work of this chapter? Is it for self-study, for healing, for building a skill without distraction? Knowing its temporary changes your posture. You stop just enduring the days, waiting for them to be over. You start asking how to use them well, precisely because they are limited. Second, apply it to the small moments, the pang on a Sunday evening, the sense of being apart during a holiday. See those as passing weather, a cloud moving across the sun. You don't build a house for the cloud, you acknowledge the shade, you note the chill, and you trust in change. The sun is still there, the cloud will move. Your peaceful core is still there, the feeling will pass. So here's a question. Knowing this solitude is temporary, how can you best use it instead of just waiting for it to end? Frame the answer not in grand terms, but for this week. If this chapter closed 6 months from now, what would you want to have accomplished within yourself in that time? What inner resource could you cultivate now, in the quiet, that would serve you no matter what comes next? This impermanence, it's not a reason for despair. It's the reason to engage with it fully, with intention, before it changes into something else. Don't let culture tell you what being alone means. As someone practicing stoicism, you get to decide what a good, virtuous, solitary life looks like. For a long time, you've probably taken in a story without even noticing. A story that says being alone means something's wrong, that it's a waiting room, that it's a space of lack. That's a cultural imprint, and it's strong, but it's not a truth. It's just one judgment, and your main job as a Stoic is to examine those judgments, to see if they serve your peace, your character. The world tends to measure a good life by external things, by social calendars, by visible companionship, by a certain noisy vitality. Stoicism turns that measure completely inward. It teaches the only true good is virtue, living with wisdom, courage, justice, self-discipline. That good is cultivated inside. It doesn't need an audience, it doesn't need a +1. It can flourish in quiet soil just as much as in a crowded field. So this is your permission to craft your own definition of what makes a solitary life good. not based on absence but on presence, the presence of the virtues you choose to strengthen. Your solitude becomes the workshop for that. What does a personally defined, virtuous solitude look like? It starts by rejecting that default story of lack. It means looking at your quiet hours and asking not what's missing, but what's possible. What quality of character can I develop here that gets diluted in the noise? Maybe it's the discipline to work deeply on a skill without interruption, or the courage to sit with uncomfortable thoughts until they lose their power. It could be the patience to learn something complex, step by step, without performing for anyone, or the simple wisdom to rest without guilt, understanding that restoration is a good use of time. That's how you reclaim the story. You move from being a passive character in a story you didn't write to being the author of your own chapter. A practical way to do this is to write a short personal manifesto for your solitude. Not a grand life plan, but a clear statement of intent for right now. Take a page. At the top, write, "In my solitude I cultivate." Then list the virtues you want to embody. Be specific, not just discipline, but the discipline to write one page each morning. Not just courage, but the courage to start a difficult conversation I've been avoiding. Not just peace, but the peace that comes from limiting social media. This manifesto isn't a rigid to-do list. It's a compass. On days when the quiet feels heavy, you can return to it and ask, which of these virtues can I practice right now? That question turns the moment from empty time into purposeful ground. So here's a prompt to carry. What 3 words would you want to describe your character at the end of this period of solitude? Would it be resilient, serene, deeply curious? Now, how can you act on just one of those words today? If you choose resilient, maybe that means finishing a task you've put off, proving to yourself you can endure the discomfort of starting. If you choose serene, it might mean 10 minutes in quiet observation, letting the rush of the world fall away without a fight. Your definition of a good solitary life is built through these small, daily alignments. It's built by deciding this time, your time, is for cultivating a character no one can ever take from you. Loneliness from rejection, from loss it stings. Stoicism doesn't deny that. It just gives you a way through. The pain is a signal. It's telling you something you valued is gone. The Stoic move is to listen to the signal without letting it rewrite your whole story. The event itself, the rejection, the end of a connection, that's an external fact. It happened, it's in the past now, in the realm of things you can't change. Your judgment of it, your sense of self-worth, what you choose to do next, these are the territories you still govern. That's the core of it. You separate the blow from the bruise. The blow was outside your control. The healing of the bruise, that process, is yours to direct. Epictetus had the clearest map for this. He said people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. The rejection is one thing. The story you build around it, that you're unlovable, that you'll always be alone, that your worth is less, that's the second thing. That's the view, and that's where your power lies. You can't control the first thing, but you can examine the second. You can challenge it. You can change it. Your peace depends on that examination. So take a practical contrast. In one response, the pain of rejection leads to a spiral. The mind loops on what went wrong. It assigns global blame to the self. It retreats into isolation, not as a chosen solitude, but as a hiding place. The alone time becomes a chamber of echoes, repeating the same story of lack. That strengthens the story. It makes the inner citadel feel like a ruin. The Stoic response uses the same alone time, but with a different intent. The first step is to acknowledge the feeling without becoming it. You might say, "This hurts, that's my judgment right now. I feel a sense of loss." Then you consciously redirect your focus to what's within your control. You retreat to your inner citadel not to hide, but to repair it, to reinforce it. You open a journal. You write down the facts of the event as plainly as possible. Then you write down the judgment, the story you've attached to it, And then you ask, is this story true? Is it helpful? Does it serve my character? From there, you re-engage with your values. You ask, what can I do today that aligns with self-respect? Maybe it's a small act of self-care, or reaching out to a different friend, not for validation, but for genuine connection. Or dedicating an hour to a project that reminds you of your own capabilities. You're using the solitude not as proof of your isolation, but as the raw material for rebuilding your sense of agency. So here's a quiet question. In the face of a past rejection, what's one aspect of your character you can choose to strengthen right now? Is it resilience, the ability to get back up and engage with your day despite the ache? Is it self-respect, the decision to treat yourself with the kindness you'd offer a friend? Choose one, and then, in your next moment of quiet, perform one small, tangible action in its name. That action is your declaration. It says the event doesn't get to define what you build next, your character does. You might be physically alone, but in spirit, you can be part of a community that isn't bound by time. The fellowship of everyone trying to live by reason. The Stoics had a name for this, the Cosmopolis, the city of the world. It's not a physical place. It's a shared citizenship, and it's based on one thing: the capacity for rational thought. So when you choose to live with virtue, with wisdom and courage in your quiet room, you're not acting in isolation. You're aligning your actions with the logos, the rational principle that orders everything, and in that alignment, you become a citizen of this larger community. Connected to every other person across any distance, across any age, who is also trying to live well. Marcus Aurelius came back to this idea again and again. He wrote to himself, "Remember, you are a citizen of the great world city. What benefits the hive benefits the bee." He saw his own struggles, his solitude, his sense of duty not as private burdens, but as contributions to this invisible, rational commonwealth. His reason was the link, a thread connecting his individual mind to the universal mind present in all things. That reframes the whole solitary practice. You're not just working on yourself for yourself, you're participating in a grand human project, the project of cultivating wisdom against the current of chaos. Your effort to find peace in the quiet, to build your inner citadel, that's a silent vote for that order. It's a contribution to the collective strength of reason in the world. Think of it as a vast, silent network. You can't see the other nodes, but you know they're there. The philosopher writing in her study centuries ago. The student reading a text on the other side of the world today. The person choosing patience in a difficult moment, anywhere. They're all citizens of the same cosmopolis. Your solitary discipline places you among them. It creates a fellowship that goes beyond physical presence. So how do you make this feel real, practically? It starts with shifting your sense of connection. Instead of feeling the absence of specific people, you can cultivate a feeling of solidarity with this abstract striving. When you sit down to journal, to untangle a judgment, you can think, "I am doing the work of a citizen." When you choose a difficult but virtuous action over an easy, selfish one, you can see it as upholding the laws of this invisible city. Your quiet evening of study isn't just personal improvement. It's a meeting of the minds. You're in dialogue with Seneca, with Epictetus, with Marcus. And with every modern reader grappling with the same lines, that room is suddenly crowded with the best of company. So here's a question for your next moment of quiet. How does my effort to be content and virtuous alone contribute to that wider, invisible community of thoughtful people? Your answer might be that it adds one more point of calm to a noisy world. One more example that a good life can be built from within, that your resilience in solitude becomes, in its own quiet way, a gift to the cosmopolis. A proof that peace is possible even here. The Stoics had this tool, a kind of paradoxical exercise. They'd imagine losing the people around them. It's called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Sounds grim, but the point isn't despair. It's the opposite. By really thinking through that loss, you do two things. You learn to value those connections more now while they're here. And you prove to yourself ahead of time that you could withstand their absence. It's a rehearsal for resilience in the safety of your own mind. Seneca wrote about this. He told his friend Lucilius to periodically contemplate losing things, possessions, status, loved ones, not to create fear but to disarm it. He said we should remind ourselves that we love mortal things, that what's been given can be taken back. By thinking it through now, he said, you won't be overwhelmed if it happens later. The blow loses its surprise. You've already traced the path through that hardship in your imagination. You've already started to locate your own strength. So the fear of solitude, that anxiety of being alone, it often comes from a hidden belief, the belief that our well-being is tied to specific people being present. Negative visualization tests that belief. It asks you to look at that dependency and see if it's really true. You run a thought experiment, not to invite loss, but to discover the resources you already have that would remain. Try a brief version. Think of someone important in your life, a close friend, family member. Now imagine a circumstance where they're not nearby anymore. Maybe a distant move, a change in paths. Sit with that idea for a moment. Notice the initial emptiness it might create, then guide your thoughts forward. Ask yourself, in that scenario, what would my days look like? What routines would I establish? Which of my own interests, my own projects sitting on the shelf, would I finally give proper time to? How would I structure my evenings to find peace? This isn't about replacing the person. It's about illuminating the landscape of your own capabilities that exists alongside them. You're mapping the internal resources, your discipline, your curiosity, your capacity for quiet joy, that are yours regardless. This practice, done honestly, does something quiet. It reduces the terror of aloneness because you've already visited that country in your mind. You've surveyed the terrain. You've identified the streams you could drink from, the ground where you could build a shelter. You realize you're not a barren land. You're a landscape with its own features, its own fertility. So here's a prompt. Imagine you had to spend the next month in total, deliberate solitude. No social contact, not as punishment but as a retreat. What internal resources would you rely on? What daily practices would make that time meaningful? Would it be a dedicated writing practice, a training regimen, a deep study of something that fascinates you? Make a mental list or write it down. That list is more than a plan. It's a portrait of your self-sufficiency. It shows you the pillars of your inner citadel, standing firm even when the courtyard is quiet. By premeditating on the absence, you come to a clearer appreciation for the gift of connection and for the enduring strength of your own company. Stoicism talks about pruning your social garden. Loneliness can grow in all that clutter, all those connections that don't really mean anything. You can be surrounded by people and still feel alone if none of them actually see you. It's just noise, a lot of voices, but no real conversation. Stoics always focused on what's essential, on what you can actually control, and in your social life, the only thing you fully control is your own character in a relationship. You can choose to be honest. You can choose to be loyal. You can be supportive. You can't control how the other person responds. You can't control whether the connection lasts, but you can choose where to put your time and energy. You can choose to invest only in bonds that have some potential for mutual growth, for virtue. When you do that, when you simplify your social world down to the most meaningful parts, something changes. The time you spend alone between those connections, it stops feeling like a gap. It starts to feel like ground, necessary ground, fertile. It's the space where you integrate what you've learned, where you restore your energy for real engagement, where you cultivate the inner resources you'll bring to the next meeting. Your solitude becomes a workshop. A workshop for your side of the friendship, and that makes the time together richer. Seneca wrote about this. In his letters, he talked about the burden of superficial acquaintances. He saw them as a drain, a distraction from the real work of living well. His advice to Lucilius was to be slow to form friendships, but once you form them, be steadfast. He said a true friend is a second self. That kind of connection isn't built on gossip or convenience. It's built on shared values, on a mutual commitment to living with integrity. In a friendship like that, time apart isn't a threat, it's an opportunity for each person to strengthen individually, so you can come back to each other as better allies. On the same path, the Stoic ideal of friendship is two people walking side by side, each looking forward at the same horizon, a virtuous horizon, not constantly looking at each other for validation. You can picture two different social landscapes. In the first one, your calendar is full. Lunches, group events, digital chats buzzing all day. You're rarely physically alone. And yet, you often feel a subtle exhaustion, a sense of performing. The conversations are pleasant but forgettable. You leave feeling more drained than energized. And then the quiet moments at home feel hollow because they're just a pause from the performance, not a replenishment. Now picture the second landscape. Your social circle is smaller, maybe just a handful of people, but with them, you can discuss a difficult idea without fear. You can share a personal challenge and get thoughtful counsel, not just platitudes. You can sit in comfortable silence. After an evening with a friend like that, you return to your solitude feeling enriched. You have new thoughts to ponder. A sense of being understood. That solitude feels deep, satisfying, not like an emptiness waiting to be filled. So here's a quiet challenge to consider. Which relationships in your life are based on mutual growth and virtue, and which are based on habit or convenience or a quiet fear of being alone? This isn't about abruptly ending friendships. It's about a gentle rebalancing of your attention, consciously investing more of your social energy in the connections that leave you feeling more whole, and gracefully allowing the more superficial ones to occupy less of your inner world. When you do this, your alone time transforms. It's no longer a reminder of what you lack. It becomes the peaceful, purposeful space between acts of genuine connection. Stoic solitude isn't just a mental thing. It's also about the disciplined care of the body. The one you're alone with. When you feel that hollow ache of loneliness, it's easy to let the physical side slump, to skip the walk, to eat something quick, to stay up too late scrolling, mistaking the screen light for rest. And that neglect creates a loop. A tired, undernourished body sends signals of depletion to the mind. And the mind then interprets the quiet as emptiness, not as space. The Stoics broke that loop. They saw caring for the body as a foundational practice, a direct exercise in self-command. Musonius Rufus, he was a teacher of Epictetus. He gave entire lectures on this. He argued physical training was essential for the philosopher. Not for strength to lift heavy things, he said, but for the strength to act with courage, for the endurance to bear hardship without complaint. The body's condition supports the mind's work. Marcus Aurelius, in his private notes, he constantly reminded himself to treat his body with respect. He called it an instrument, a vessel given for a short while. He wrote that we must not pamper it, but we must not neglect it either. We must care for it just enough so that it obeys the mind, so it responds to reason, so it doesn't become a distraction through sickness or sloth. This is askesis in its physical form, voluntary, structured discipline. It transforms a solitary hour from passive time into active maintenance. You're not just working out, you're practicing obedience to your own rational choice. You're honoring the partnership. So on a quiet Tuesday, what does this look like? It could be a mindful walk, not a frantic power walk with headphones blasting, but a deliberate stroll, where you feel the rhythm of your breath syncing with your steps, where you notice the ground under your feet, the air on your skin. You're not escaping your thoughts. You're giving your body a simple task and your mind a chance to observe without pressure. It could be preparing a simple, nutritious meal for one, not throwing together scraps but chopping vegetables with attention, arranging them on a plate with a small intention of care. You're practicing the virtue of providing for your own health without fanfare. It could be a short routine of body weight exercises in your living room. 10 minutes of movement where the only goal is to complete the set with focus, feeling your muscles work in service to your will. Each of these acts is a silent statement. It says, I am here in this body, in this moment, and I choose to govern it well. This physical discipline does something for loneliness. It grounds the feeling. It pulls that vague sense of lack out of the abstract into the tangible world of sensation and action. The ache in your muscles from a good effort is a real sensation. It replaces the ghostly ache of isolation. The warmth of a well-made soup is a real comfort. The calm fatigue after movement is a real peace. So here's a question for your next hour of solitude. How can you honor the partnership between your mind and body in that time? Choose one concrete action. Will it be to step outside and walk for 15 minutes? With no destination but presence, will it be to prepare a meal that truly nourishes you, eaten at a table without distraction? Will it be to stretch gently? Listening to what your body needs after a long day, that single act is more than self-care. It's a stoic ritual, a small daily reaffirmation that you are the capable steward of your own life. In both its quiet and its motion, a daily stoic solitude ritual, it's a container, really, a space to turn theory into practice. It brings together what we've talked about: awareness, that inner conversation, mentorship, and action. A short appointment with yourself. Epictetus gave the instruction. He said from the start, say to every harsh impression, you are an impression and not necessarily the truth. This ritual is the time for that. You create a calm space to catch those impressions, the ones about loneliness or lack, and you examine them, not as commands but as suggestions. It can be brief, maybe 20 minutes, morning or before bed. Consistency matters more than how long. One possible structure. First, a moment of silent presence. 2 or 3 minutes, just sit, breathe, notice the physical sensations, the chair, the sound of your breath. It grounds you in the now, pulls you out of stories about past or future isolation. Then open a journal, use a prompt, a simple one. What story about being alone did I believe today? Is it an impression or is it the whole truth? Write a few lines. This is applying Epictetus directly, separating the fact of solitude from your judgment of it. Next, 5 or 10 minutes with a stoic text, a single paragraph from Marcus Aurelius. Or a short letter from Seneca. Read it slowly, underline one sentence that speaks to you, write it down, jot a single question it raises for your life. That's your mentorship, your connection to other thoughtful minds. Finally, choose one small act, a minute of voluntary discomfort like a cooler shower. Or a moment of Otium, 5 focused minutes on a skill. It proves your self-command, turns time into a purposeful offering. The shape isn't what's important. It's the intention, it's your daily training ground, so the task is to design your own, based on what resonated from our journey, a personal 3-step solitude ritual. What's the one stoic principle you most want to embody? If it's present moment awareness, your first step might be a sensory observation. If it's inner dialogue, your core step could be a specific journal prompt. If it's mentorship, your step might be reading one passage and writing a response. Keep it simple, tangible, short enough that you'll actually do it. This ritual becomes your anchor, the daily thread that weaves stoic solitude into the fabric of your life. It transforms quiet moments from something to endure into something to cultivate. Loneliness is something we add to the quiet. It's a judgment, a story we tell ourselves about what's missing. Solitude is just the quiet itself. It's neutral. The Stoics, they gave us tools not to escape that quiet, but to live inside it, to build an inner citadel, a place of peace no matter who's at the gate. To practice Amor Fati, to love the fate of a quiet evening as if you'd chosen it, to anchor yourself in the present moment, because that's where loneliness loses its grip, those stories about the past or the future. They fade, and to cultivate a kind of self-sufficiency, so solitude isn't a threat anymore. It becomes fertile ground. These aren't just ideas, they're daily exercises. A skill you build rep by rep in the quiet moments between everything else, being content alone. It's not a trait you either have or you don't, it's a practice. A discipline of perception, something you choose again and again. Marcus Aurelius had a line. He wrote, "Look within. Within is the fountain of good, and it will ever bubble up if you will ever dig." The fountain is already there, in your own reasoned mind, in your capacity for virtue. The digging, that's the daily work, turning inward, especially when the world gets quiet. So your next moment of solitude, see it not as a burden, but as an invitation to dig, to sit with the quiet and ask, what judgment am I placing on this space? Can I see it as an opportunity instead, to strengthen one part of my character, to enjoy one simple thing without an audience? That shift in seeing, that's where the skill begins.